off the ground, I picked up my basket, smoothing the skirt of my house dress, and hoping I hadn't managed to get a grass stain on my behind. It would have been completely normal for a younger woman to sit in the middle of her backyard, daydreaming the morning away, but a younger woman I was not, so I made my way inside. It wasn't until I'd put the laundry basket downstairs in the basement that I remembered I'd left my shoes in the grass. When Norman and I were first married, we had next to nothing. An apartment with very little elbow room, a rusty bicycle Norm used to make deliveries for the family bakery, and a mismatched set of dishes collected from the extras of a few church ladies. That was it. I hardly had a pot to boil water in. Oh, but we were young and in love. We hardly realized what we lacked. We lived in that little apartment for 5 years before we were able to buy a house. Of course, 2 of those years, Norm was gone at war in Japan, and I was glad I didn't have to keep up anything with a yard while he was gone. After he came home, we bought a charming 2-story on Deerfield Avenue in Norm's hometown of LaFontaine, Michigan. It was a red brick house with white trim and black shutters. The yard was a nice size with plenty of shade trees and flower beds. Norm apologized for not being able to afford something more palatial, but it was just right for me. It was a home of our own, and that was all I'd ever dared dream. On the day we moved in, Norm had carried me over the threshold, shutting the door behind us with his foot. He didn't put me down in the living room, but just kept on lugging me through to the doorway of our new-to-us bedroom. "What are you doing?" I'd asked, giggling and blushing in a way that I hoped was becoming of a 22-year-old woman. "Norman!" "Well, sweetheart," he'd answered, "I thought it was a good time to get started on filling this house with children." The rest of that memory was best left between my husband and me. I'd always been prone to blushing. Unfortunately, flushed cheeks on a 40-year-old woman wasn't as becoming, and a signal of a different kind of change on the horizon. As sweet as that first day in our home had been, and most of the 18 years after, there were a few bitter times. From where I stood at my pink porcelain sink, doing up a few dishes, I could see where Norman might have built a playhouse or put up a swing set. I blinked away my imagination and drained the water from the sink before drying my hands. It was a bad habit of mine, pining away after what could never be. "Now, Betty," I said to myself, "carry on." If there was one thing I'd learned, it was that God did give and take away. I didn't have to like it. I only had to accept that he knew what he was doing. Instead of letting myself think of it too much, I made my grocery list for the week. While some women, it seemed, could work their way through the aisles of the store, knowing by instinct what their pantries lacked, and only getting what they needed, I tended to wonder if I didn't have something to keep me on task. My list had changed quite a bit in the 23 years since we'd gotten married. I no longer had to scrimp and save the way I had at the beginning. I could even splurge a little now and then. I tried to never take it for granted. Slipping the list into my purse, I noticed the brown paper bag on the kitchen counter. Norman had forgotten his lunch, the silly man. I grabbed it as I headed out the door. I never did mind an excuse to stop in at the bakery and see him in the middle of the day. LaFontaine was a Goldilocks-sized town. Not so big that someone could be completely invisible, not so small that everyone knew the business of everybody else. It was just right. Our little community was smack dab between Detroit and Lansing. If ever we wanted something only a bigger city could offer, it was just a 45-minute drive in one direction or the other. Usually, though, everything I needed was less than a mile from my front door. I could have walked to get my hair cut, or have my teeth cleaned, or any other number of things. Of course, I usually drove to save myself a little time. Besides, I never felt so sophisticated as when I was behind the wheel of my coral and gray Chevy Bel Air,